Kyle Kuzma potentially on his way out of Washington. Where is he going to land, and how are teams actually going to use him if they are able to acquire him? We're going to dig in. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. Only about 20% of you right now are subscribed. So the other 80%, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Joined by Donnie Freeman, a.k.a. D-Free. Donnie, how you doing?
Doing pretty good this gloomy Friday morning. What about you?
Hanging in there. And glad that we've got a little bit of intel because Kyle Kuzma, I think, is one of the more interesting names out there on the trade market. And now we've got some insight into not just what the market might look like, but where he might actually wind up going. So take a look at this. This is from Brett Siegel, who wrote, "Believe it or not, Kuzma actually holds," I love believe it or not, Kuzma actually holds a strong market as a secondary player who's proven to be able to lead his team's offensive attack at times. The Warriors, Blazers, Kings, Pacers, and Pistons have all been linked to Kuzma recently. It's worth noting that the Milwaukee Bucks also expressed interest in Kuzma previously, yet it would be almost impossible for them to acquire him due to second apron restrictions. The Lakers, Heat, and Cavs are three other teams that have been in the Kuzma market over the last year, according to Michael Scotto of Hoopsite. Okay, so that's interesting. I mean, that's a very wide range of teams that are at very different trajectories right now. And I think that tells you how valued the wing market is in the NBA, that you've got teams like the Blazers that are very early in a rebuild, the Pistons who are starting to try to ramp up their rebuild. You've got a team like the Warriors, the Cavs that are firmly in that contender status, the Lakers, the Heat that are trying to make that next step up. There, you've got teams all the way across the NBA spectrum here that have interest in Kyle Kuzma. And again, I think that speaks to the value of the wing position as well as the versatility that Kyle Kuzma offers.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I do question the fit on some of these teams because I don't know that getting better should be the goal of like the Blazers right now. Maybe they should wait a couple years to decide that, or, you know, things like that. But it is pretty interesting to see that these are the teams that have been making calls for Kuz. Do you think there's going to be a team that we're not seeing here that maybe potentially swings at him and decides that he's the piece for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think a number of teams could be interested. Like, could the Orlando Magic get in on Kyle Kuzma? They could certainly be a piece away. Maybe they're a team that would have interest. But I think the teams could talk themselves into it. The Dallas Mavericks were in fact, tried to trade for Kuzma last season, but they didn't get a deal done. Instead, they wound up getting PJ Washington and then went that route. But they could certainly be a team. I want to take a look at the contract of Kyle Kuzma and see exactly how they can make that work, as well as what Kuzma brings to a team. But first, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. Always fun to play daily fantasy with Prize Picks. Let's make a few selections real quick here for tonight's games. Donnie, I'm taking a look here. Donovan Mitchell against Washington, 4.5 assists. We're talking about Kyle Kuzma. I don't know how long Washington stays in this game for Donovan Mitchell to be on the floor that much. I'm kind of leaning less because I think it's going to be a blowout.
Yeah, you're going to go that angle? Okay, yeah, that's fair. We could do that. I mean, yeah, hopefully it is, and we're right with that, but that's fair.
And guys, if you want to play Prize Picks, you can use our promo code Bulletin. The link is in the description down below. Use that promo code Bulletin and go check them out. We'll make a couple more picks here, but again, wanted to shout out that promo code. It is Bulletin, just like Basketball Bulletin. Go check that out. You get a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. All right, let's make a couple more picks here. Let's see. Let's go with, oh man, that just hurts. Walker Kessler, seeing him on there. What about Anthony Davis? No LeBron for the Lakers tonight. He's going to have a big game. 44 points, rebounds, and assists against Minnesota. Is this another blowout?
No, I don't think it'll be a blowout. I'll go more on that. I think AD steps up tonight. That's a hard number, but I think he steps up.
Yeah, and I kind of like the points, rebounds, and assists at 44 more than the 29.5 points, because he could have a really big rebounding night. You never know with AD. Let's do one more here. Ivica Zubac. I mean, he's been a tremendous rebounder. I know he's going up against Jokic. I know that's going to be tough with the Denver Nuggets, but rebounds and assists, he's been great rebounding the basketball all season. So I'm going to go with him. So I've got Donovan Mitchell I've got Anthony Davis and Ivica Zubac. Go check those guys out. And again, if you want to play Prize Picks, some really great stuff there, makes the game that much more fun. You can go to prizepicks.com, use our code Bulletin, and get a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. The link is in the description down below. Go play Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Donnie, let's get back to Kyle Kuzma. Let's take a look at the contract here. It's not a bad deal. We look at Kyle Kuzma's contract, particularly because it's declining. And this is part of the reason why teams would have interest. $23.5 million this season, but then $21.5 next season and $19.4 the season after that. You can see here on Spot Track, that is, only 11% of the cap for Kyle Kuzma in a couple of years. Crazy. That's fantastic value. So that right there is part of the reason why teams have interest, and a wide variety of teams have interest in Kyle Kuzma, because, Donnie, when you look at the stats, he's not been very efficient this year, has he? 42% from the field, 28% from three. I think the contract is so nice, and in my mind, teams have to be buying that his percentages this year are just small sample size, and they will go back to normal.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case here. I don't think he suddenly became a 28% three-point shooter. I think he's just played in so few games. He hasn't really been able to catch a rhythm and, go on a few games hot streak and bring that number back up. But I do think that'll normalize. Looking at the 2-point percentage at 48% there, that's not great either. Effective, all that stuff is just down across the board. And then he's also dropped off 6 points or so from scoring. So I just think with Kuz, you can basically chalk this entire season up thus far into just being him underperforming, but you should have confidence that he will come back up. Again, the free throw shooting, everything is down for Kuz this year. And I think if you're a team that's trying to add him, I'm actually really intrigued with that contract because it's better than I thought it was. And it's only for a couple more years around that number, 19, 20. And he's versatile, man. We saw it when he was a little bit younger. I don't know that you have concerns about his age. I think his game and all that stuff will still be at a peak level in a couple of years from now. I think that'll be fine with him. I don't think he's going to, age poorly or anything like that. He's not hyper reliant on athleticism or anything like that. And I think that he can bring a lot of things to your team, and he could be a nice option for you scoring. I like him a lot. We were talking about this previously. I like him as a player. Ideally, and these are not the teams that are really listed here in today's video, ideally a team that's got a couple star players and could have Kuzma as like the third guy that maybe gets some late closeouts, easy drop-off passes where he can finish those types of looks. That would be really good for him to where he's not getting primary option attention. I think that would be a team that he would really excel on. And I think also he could get back to form as a defensive player and be useful there too. So I think Kuz could add a lot of value, especially at that number.
I think teams are looking for versatile players on the wing, and he can do that. Now, it is worth noting that last season so far this season with the Wizards, he spent nearly all of his minutes, 94% of his minutes at power forward. He spent 83% of his minutes at power forward last season. He's been playing very little. In fact, he hasn't really played small forward much in the last couple of seasons. He's been more 4-5 than 3-4, which might be a little bit surprising to those who remember him from his days with the Lakers, but he's been playing nearly exclusively the bigger positions. I think one of the keys, though, for Kyle Kuzma, regardless of what position it is, we were looking at this earlier, Donnie, if you look at his stat sheet, the key to Kyle Kuzma and three-point production, particularly efficiency from there, is taking corner threes. He is highly efficient from the corners. You look year after year, he shoots very, very well from the corners. Unfortunately, he does not shoot so well above the break, and that tends to be the higher volume of his three-point attempts are the above the break threes. So whatever team gets him needs to make sure that they've got an offensive system where Kuzma can be the one to occupy that corner shot. So I do wonder, like when we talk about Sacramento being an option, with Keegan Murray there already, is he going to occupy that space on the floor? What about DeMar DeRozan? Is he going to occupy that space on the floor? Because Kyle Kuzma is such a more effective player when he can be the player that floats out to the corner three on the offensive end.
Yeah, I do worry about him in a team like that where they've already got somebody, and you can never have enough wings in today's current NBA. So that's a good problem to have, right? But I do worry about the opportunity he would have on a team like that, with again them already having that there. But if they were to make a trade for him, I have confidence they'd make it work. I think that the Kings need to get bigger, but if they
Yeah.
were to pull in Kuzma, I think they would probably try to run some, small ball five lineups where they're just doing that. And Kuzma is out there at the center. I don't know that that's what they should be trying to do, but I think that would probably wind up being something that they want up doing if they put him there. But like you said, I don't know if you showed the percentages or not, but he's been extremely good from the corners. Whereas above the break, where he takes a huge majority of his 3-point shots, that basically tanks his overall percentages. So if you can put him in the corners, I think that's really great.
I mean, look at this. This is last season, so we had a larger sample size of games played. With the Wizards, 46.5% from the corner three here, 36.4% from the corner three on this side. But then when you look at, and this is on, 66 attempts here, 43 attempts here. Then you look at the above the breaks, 95 attempts, 110 attempts, 135 attempps, and he's shooting below league average on all of those. 33.7% there, 28%. Ouch, 28. I mean, 7%, over 7% below league average on 110 attempts. This is killing his value as an offensive player. The above the break threes. If you could find a way to just restrict him to court, which you can't on this Wizards team. You need him putting up shots on this Wizards team. But if a team can get him and restrict him essentially to the corners, that would go a long way towards improving his offensive efficiency and therefore his value on that end. So I'm sure that teams are not, unaware of that fact. And that is a factor in terms of why these teams are after Kyle Kuzma. What of these teams, what's the worst landing spot for Kyle Kuzma of the reported teams that are interested in him?
Maybe just
Why is
the Blazers.
Is the Blazers?
Maybe?
That's my pick.
Well, like I've been critical of the Blazers on the channel, so Blazer fans, it's nothing personal. I just don't think that they should be trying to bring in a veteran forward and trying to get better. I think that's what it is. I think they should be just looking for younger guys. Like if Kyle was 23, then obviously he wouldn't be on the market at that value. But they should be trying to get guys like that right now and worrying about that going forward. I assume they have their pick. You don't want to get better right now. You're trying to offload those guys. So I think that's more what it is. But I like him in these other spots. I just don't know if they have the structure to put him in the perfect position all the time. But I think the Warriors would be an interesting spot for him too, as another option for them. But the Warriors are looking for a bigger name. I think that they would be disappointed. Not really like oh we got Kuz, but I don't think that's really what they're looking for. They've been looking for Paul George, Lauri Markkanen, LeBron, Jimmy Butler. Like they're not looking for Kuz. If they were to try to get him, they'd probably need like 2 Kuzmas or something like that. The Pistons, I think, could be really nice. I like what they're doing and what they're putting together this year.
Sure.
But I think you'd have Kuz for a couple years, so maybe next year you're truly into it, and at that point it'd be better value than it is now. But I really would like to see him more on a team that, like the Cavs, that is like right there, and they're just looking for one more piece. I think he's that guy, and it's similar to the Brandon Ingram discussion, but he's $10 million cheaper and not looking for a $50 million extension.
And that's true. That's a great point. The challenge is he's not a great. I think what these contending teams want, it's the Cavs and like they want the 3-point shooter, and they want a guy who's a lockdown defender. And he's not either of those things. He's not a good 3-point shooter unless you can stick him in the corners. And he's not a lockdown defensive. He's not terrible. And I think on the right team, his defense will be better because he won't have to burn out so much energy on the offensive end as he does on the Washington Wizards. But I'll tell you what, the Blazers, for all the reasons you listed, they don't make sense. The Pacers, he makes sense for their play style, but you already have Pascal Siakam. And I think if anything, they need to get bigger. They need size. They need a backup big. They need physicality. And that's not really what Kyle Kuzma offers. So the Sacramento Kings thought they traded for Kyle Kuzma years ago, and the Lakers probably wish they had just done that in the Buddy Hield trade. So they've been interested in instead of trading for Russell Westbrook. But the Kings have been interested in him for a while. So there's a lot of places that he can fit. But in terms of his best fit, I am kind of looking at like his Golden State, the team that makes the most sense? Do you go in with DeAnthony Melton's expiring contract, and do you add up, say, I don't know, like a Gary Payton II, and then you throw in some draft capital or something of that effect? Maybe that's a team that might make some sense for him. But the bottom line is, I do think we're going to see a pretty sizable market here for Kuzma because he can fit in so many different places in so many different ways. The question is, can a team finally get the most out of him from an efficiency standpoint? And a lot of that is going to come down to where he's taking his shots from on the floor. And it's going to come down to how well can he fit into the team scheme defensively once he has to shift back into a role of not being the main guy on the offensive end. So very talented player, something to watch. Wings on the market, always in high demand. But not only all of this, Donnie, but it makes a ton of sense for the Wizards to be ready to move on from him. So he is, I think, one of the bigger names on the market that I would say is more likely than not to be moved by the February 6th trade deadline.
And he's not hard to move. I don't think he's hard to move, even if he does have some deficiencies that we've kind of talked about. He's at such a great number that, like, I think he can slide in. So over the last couple of minutes, one of the things that I was doing while you were going is I was checking out some of the defensive rating numbers. Now there are so many ways to quantify defense in the NBA. I don't know that we've actually perfected doing that in terms of looking at stats and defense correlation, but for Kuz, one thing that I saw was pretty interesting was going back to the title year and then until the second year in Washington, he was at about 108, 109. And then even the first year in Washington, he was at about 111. So, like, I think that tells you that if you put him in the right system, he can be a good team defender, which I think does have value because the league average, I think number one right now is 110 defensive rating, which is crazy. And we're just talking about a couple years ago. So, like, I think that if you put him in the right system, he could be extremely useful there with his versatility, length, athleticism on the perimeter and all that stuff. And also, I think he's just big enough to, if you wanted to run small ball, which I do think a lot of these teams should try to skew and get a bigger guy. But if you wanted to do that, because he does play a lot of 4 or 5, I think he can hold up just a little bit there.
Yeah, so really interesting piece here on the trade market. Everybody let us know in the comment section what you think about Kyle Kuzma's market. Where is the best landing spot for him? And go check out our latest video, which is on the NBA and why. What is happening? Why are ratings down and ticket prices dropping? Go check that out right now.